What's up everyone, welcome to Toobmeji's Arsenal. Today we're talking about this boy, this bad boy, the Hamilton Dodson. One of my favorite watches in my collection. Got a bunch of new information on it, thanks to a subscriber out there. I'll put his comment right here. Thank you very much, I forgot your username. We'll also be covering some tips for you guys about collecting vintage watches and what I've learned over the years of being, maybe about the past 2 years of being a vintage watch collector. Thank you guys for clicking on the video. Let's roll the intro.
Because it is survival of the fittest. When the shit hits the fan, I got my shake in my hand. Black man with the permanent tan. I come from the villain that ran. Damn, I'm feeling another part of reality. Hit me when I represent the
This Hamilton right here, the Hamilton Dodson, was made from around 1938 to 1948. It's really what I consider a war era wristwatch. The movement is the 987A, and it was also overproduced heavily before World War II. And then once the United States entered the war in 1942, they had a bunch of extras due to an oversurplus in the market, and they started dumping them into World War II wristwatches for soldiers. This wristwatch, the Dodson, has a bunch of brothers and cousins. It's got the Ross, the Emerson, the Essex, the Vincent, the Wilshire, the Brock, the Whitman, and the Gilman. So a bunch of interesting names, really British names. That whole time period was like, you know, the 38, whatever. I think even President Roosevelt had touched a little thing about it, but they were overproducing wristwatches like crazy, overproducing everything in the United States economy like crazy, because we just came out of the Depression and everyone was feeling optimistic, creating, but a lot of surplus. And like I said, those watch surpluses from that 987A movement goes into watches like the Hamilton World War II wristwatches. I'll put some pictures up of them there. Someone was asking about that in a different video, but those are the movements in a lot of those. Hamilton itself is a 100% American brand from 1892 to 1964. Hamilton made its own in-house movements, its own dials. It was a completely in-house watch shop, well, for most of it. Made in America. This movement in particular, actually, this exact movement was made in the United States. And Hamilton itself, if you guys know the Hamilton khaki, I made a video about it way while back. It's probably the most famous watch Hamilton makes today. It's about a $300, maybe $450 price range field watch. It's the main competitor, I think, to the Seiko Alpinist. Very famous watch. I've reviewed it. I like it also. Comes in a nice, I can't remember if it's 38 or 36 millimeters, but beautiful watch. Great strap also. Except Hamilton, after 1969, was bought up by a Swiss brand, and I think now it's incorporated into what is it called? That big Swiss conglomerate. Oh my gosh. When you forget really big things like that, you feel a little iffy. That's the Dodson. I'll show you guys it. I love it a lot. It's a great watch. Yeah, I like a lot about it. It's gold. All of the watches that Hamilton made in that little era were gold. It's gold plated. The movement comes off like this. You see that little little stump? You put your finger right in there. It's very easy to pull out the movement. It comes out just like that. Here's the crystal. Here is the crystal. And here's the movement. It's definitely, the watchmaker side is all cornered up. It's kind of like a lot of Japanese movements where you start from the dial and then you go down. But it's a great watch. Hopefully I've been putting in B-roll. I got this one actually from my neighbor, and that puts me perfectly into the segment about collecting vintage wristwatches. You know, there's a few different routes you can go. You can go the whole doing your research, finding a specific vintage watch that you like, and then finding it on eBay or seeing if you can find it at a different watch shop. That's one way you can do it. That's not how I've been finding any of my vintage watches. All of my vintage watches I've found at either Goodwills, thrift stores, garage sales, gifts from neighbors, kind of like if you're an antique hunter. I mean, I'm sure you guys know that guy who's always out there hustling, going to thrift stores, buying stuff, flipping them. I mean, for me, I kind of have that mentality. I'm not over here flipping that many wristwatches, but when it comes to my vintage pieces, they come to me and I find them in ways that that are not as simple as going on eBay and then typing in whatever specific movement I want or company, and it kind of brings the character out, I think, in the collection, my collection, really, really well. I'm from the United States. I'm from Seattle, and I mostly travel. I've been to Canada, I've been to Guatemala, I've been to Mexico, and I've also been to the Philippines. And every single place I've been to, you find completely different kinds of watches. For example, in the Philippines, you find a lot of Japanese Frankenstein watches. In Mexico, you find a lot of Benrus vintage watches. And obviously here in the United States, you find a lot of American wristwatches. I've got one. My uncle was working as a Goodwill, which is a giant thrift store donation guy, and he found one of the Longines. Actually, I'll show you guys the Longines. He found this Longines, my little gold Longines, at the the collection stuff. He took it, stole it actually, and then gave it to me. Some of them I got from my neighbor. This one along with the Dodson I got from my neighbor. Just striking up a conversation with him, saying, "Hey, I like watches." He's like, "Oh, that's cool. I have some old ones if you want to check them out." I was like, "Yeah, sure." We talked. He said, "What's up?" He gave it to me, and that's awesome. Some of this right here I got from Goodwill shopping. It was face down like this. I saw the curved display, and I knew it was a vintage watch, so I had to get it. You know, every single vintage watch that I have gotten in a different way, and it all has its own unique story. So that's what I recommend to you guys. I recommend going out to the garage sales, going out to estate sales, going out to thrift stores, going to antique shops, asking your friends, asking your grandpa, asking your great grandpa, asking your dad, just letting people know you're into watches. I mean, once people know you're into watches, things come your way. Things really do come your way when it comes to getting these types of watches. Even if your neighbor, let's say you have a neighbor and you know he's lived in this house for 60 years or something, you're chatting him up and he's like, "Hey, you're like, yeah, I really like watches." You're like, "Wait, hold on a second. Maybe I have some old watches that my grandpa had, or I had, or my son had, or something like that, right?" And they all can come to you in really interesting ways like that. I mean, that's one of my most favorite things about being a vintage watch collector. At least the kind of one I am is, number one, I get my watches for really, really good deals, and number two, the stories behind them are just as important to me liking the watch as just the watch itself to me. This watch right here actually was my neighbor across the street, who's been my neighbor across the street for 40 years almost. They've owned that property for at least 100 years up here in North Seattle, and this was actually his grandfather's watch, and my neighbor is already in his 60s. It's from 1948, right? At the latest 1948. So you really get to get a deeper appreciation of the watch, I feel, when you know a little bit of the story of how it got there, right? You know, it's cool. I'm not saying anything is wrong with going out and getting an eBay watch. Shoot, I've done that too. It's great. It's great when you want to buy a specific watch. But when you just like watches in general and you just like to be pleasantly surprised, yeah, I think that way of finding a wristwatch is great also. Just follow me on Instagram at Akuma's Arsenal. I'll put a little pop-up down below. Thanks everyone for watching the video. Akuma out.
Because it is survival of the fittest. When the shit hits the fan, I got my shank in my hand. Black man with the permanent tan. I come from the villain, never ran. Damn, I'm feeling another part of reality. Hit me when I represent the F.A.